Hello everyone, so this is a follow-up video on the editing of the raw file. So as you can see on the image in front of you, you have on the left hand side the raw file itself, and on the right hand side you have the edited raw file. So I'm just going to run through exactly how I edited the photograph, and all this again was all for the blog post JPEG versus raw on my website, which is landscapephotographyireland.com. So this is the raw image. I have everything reset back there now as such. That's the way it was shot. You can see the sun itself is more or less correctly exposed, and all the foreground and the shadow detail is nearly lost to the naked eye. There's a few sheep there dotted around. You can't actually even see them. Now the white balance is one of the things I have adjusted that I haven't corrected there now as of yet. So but you can kind of forget about that for this purpose. The vibrancy and saturation, just bring them back to 0 again. So color profile is in landscape. So let's look at what else we can do. We have the shadow clipping. This is great for highlighting the completely black areas of your photographs. You can see all the little blue sections in the image here now that are all completely black. So that's one part of it. The next part then is the highlight clipping. So if we go to that file, it'll actually highlight any areas in the image that are completely overexposed. So the sun, for example, is generally the first one. So for argument's sake, if I bring the exposure up quite a bit, you'll see a red mask start to show over any of the completely overexposed parts, like the sun here now, for example. That's showing up red, which is telling me that's pure white. I've completely overdone it. So let's just push it even further, and that's going to spread across the completely overexposed sections of the image. So what I'll do is bring the exposure back, and we'll just adjust our exposure back up along again a small bit, just until I think it's roughly about right. So we'll try even here now, let's say. So you can see the sun is overexposed there now at present. So what do we do to bring that back down now? We go to our highlights tab. So if you go to our highlight slider and just slide that back down along, you'll see the red mask is gone. We can now see the sun. It's not completely overexposed. It looks a bit dark there now, so what I'd naturally do is just go back to the exposure tab again and dial that up another small little bit, somewhere probably roughly around there, let's say. So as you can see, the top part of our image is more or less correctly exposed, more or less. The bottom part of the image is still completely wrong. That is not the way it was when I was there. So how are we going to improve on that? The next option is to go towards our shadow details. So I would normally just whack the shadow details up 100% here, because you're dealing with an image with a very high dynamic range. Now the one thing you'll notice is you're losing a small bit of contrast, a bit of definition in the grass. The blacks are gone a small bit milky, so what we can do is just bring the blacks down a small little bit. And as we drop it down along there now, that looks kind of okay. We can bring it down another small bit too as well again. If I keep going, you'll see you get this blue mask highlighting the areas that are completely black. So we've actually pushed it too far. Roughly out there is, for me, is roughly around right. You're getting a nice bit of definition in the grass there too as well. You still have the overall exposure of the grass is correct. Everything looks more or less natural the way it was. The one thing with it is I would go on to the vibrancy and saturation. I just pop those up a small little bit. Completely personal taste here. Some people go plus 50 on each or plus 30 on each. I generally tend to go around plus 10, maybe, on each, plus 10, plus 15. See, this is a bit much for my personal taste. Bring it back down along again, and I would be letting it somewhere roughly around there now. That looks good to me. It looks a bit more natural. Again, everyone is different from that point of view. So as you can see, the actual shadows and whatnot are looking really good. The highlights are looking really good. The overall photograph looks fine. If I zoom in, that is a 1:1 crop there now at the moment. So you can see there is very little noise in this. Again, because of the high dynamic range on the Nikon D850. You can see there really is no noise in it. There's no bending. There's no problems with the photograph itself. If I bring the shadow detail down, you'll see, I suppose you see the blacks really start to pop into the grass. I suppose I don't like to push it too far, really, I suppose. So, but again, as regards noise, you can actually, even if you find that a bit too noisy, like even going as 3:1 there now, so I'm looking at that more as a 300%, you can see there is very little noise in that photograph there now. So I mean, that's you could easily print that in A3 and someone standing right next to it will not see that detail. And again, even looking up at the sky, that all looks fine. Oh, there's a slight bit of a watermark there and a flare coming through. So I didn't actually even notice those, being honest with you. But yeah, so Even looking at the sheep there now and whatnot, they all look good. They all look sharp. There's no problem with the image from that point of view. So I suppose what it boils down to, again, looking at the shadow details, is if you really want to get your photograph right, it's about capturing the image in RAW, having a camera with good dynamic range. If your camera hasn't got the same dynamic range as this camera, then please use a graduated filter. Graduated filters are absolutely fantastic. So I'm just dropping everything back to natural again here now. So just pop it all back up long again. So what it is, firstly brought up the exposure, brought down the highlights, brought up the shadow detail, and boom, there you are. It's as simple as that. It really is in most cases. You can just finesse it to the way you want it then, I suppose, as such. So I'd normally say, try and keep it natural. Really try and keep it natural if you can.